Yes, sounds great. I'm going to push record before I forget because we did start to record these as well for folks who I know it's hard to attend things live, but like DJ said, we are really wanting to create community with this space. And so one of the ways to do that is to get us together, even virtually, monthly, and pull in amazing people from this community. So Jonathan being one of those people who's a current student and learning from each other. And so I will share in the chat really fast. I know you guys have probably seen these through my emails, but just to make sure you have this link is a link to the Vibe Tribe series for 2026. So you'll get a chance to see all of our speakers who are coming up for the rest of this year. We don't have them every single month, but I think it's 9 months out of the 12. So take a look, put them on your calendar. We'll send you invites. And yeah, we're just looking forward to creating more community as we go on of coaches to support each other. And I'm also really always interested in creative ideas for building community as well. So, in addition to these sessions, if you have any cool ideas, please send me a note. I'll drop my email in here, lauren@pyramidresource.com, and would love to just hear from you on ideas. So, without any further ado, DJ, I want you to have the floor again to introduce Jonathan, and I'm just excited to learn from him.
Yeah, thank you. And Jonathan, I'm going to just look at you and say what a privilege it is to have you agree to be with us and to facilitate this dialogue today. And I know it will be a dialogue. And when I got your book, after I read your bio, as we were collecting the students for this amazing cohort that's still in process, um, I really I felt two things. One, I felt like I have arrived with all
Mhm.
these people coming in. Look at them, look at them, look at who they are coming into the space to study with us. And the other thing I felt when I first met you and started reading your book was that you were onto something that is so needed, just like we felt when we started the school for working in healthcare. It's you've seen this, you have traveled a journey that has been heartbreaking and heart opening for you. And, as a cardiologist, all that you see when you're healing, all that you've seen in the conversations with families, it's like you have embodied and become a crucible for what's possible for people in medicine. Beyond your role and in the leadership space, you carry a bright light. And so we're thrilled to have you anchor the conversation today, facilitate it, and talk about the 7 traits that you've discovered. And I love your many quotes from Einstein and from Adler. The heart basically is your compass, and you should bring the brain along, something like that.
Mhm.
But I'm going to hand it to you and have you facilitate this in whatever way feels really meaningful. So have
Mhm.
at it, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, DJ. Thank you, Lauren. Hello, friends. Show of hearts for who's ready to connect with your heart. Just want to make sure we're all in the right room, the right space together. Awesome. It reminds me that one of the 65 conversations I had as I was researching the book for about a year was with a graphic designer in San Francisco. And if you've ever used an emoji for sushi or for a whale, that's her. And so she was amazing. And she helped me understand how our understanding of the heart itself in the human language has changed. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And it's interesting to me that the most commonly used emoji is the heart. And so that was part of my quest. And I'm going to invite all of us into this quest to ask the question, what is the heart? What is it? I can tell you the easy answer. The easy answer, it's this thing that beats in our chest 100,000 times a day, several million times in a lifetime, if we're lucky. And then it stops. And it's so much more than that. I'll begin with a quote from Helen Keller that helps me reorient myself from the mind into the heart. And Helen Keller, in her wisdom, said, "The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or touched. They must be felt with the heart." The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or touched. They must be felt with the heart. So as we absorb that, inviting you to get comfortable, make a shift in your body now. Whatever you've been doing until now, can you let that go? Can you give yourself permission to fully arrive in this space? What a gift to arrive together. Taking a nice deep breath in, as deep as you've done all day, filling the belly, and exhaling all the way out through the mouth. One more cleansing breath. Fill up the belly. And as you exhale, allowing the shoulders to relax, the face to relax, the hands, the belly, whatever needs softening, just let it soften. Allowing the breath to return to its natural rhythm. No need to control the breath. It's amazing. It knows what to do. Letting your body breathe. If it feels comfortable, placing one hand over your heart, maybe your right hand over your heart, with enough pressure to feel a faint heartbeat or a strong one, depending on your state. And I'll invite you, if it feels right, to place the other hand supporting the first hand. And seeing at the same time if you can both feel your own heart and also send a message to your own heart, whatever message it's needing right now. And as a coach, you know the best approach is to just ask the question. If you were coaching your own heart, what would you ask it now? Would it be something like, what are you needing? Or if you're anything like me, what has my mind been so busy with that I haven't had a chance to hear what my heart is trying to whisper? So listening for a moment to the whispers of your heart. See if you can hear what it's calling for. Is it steadiness, openness, more wisdom, creativity, lightness, courage, warmth, love, empathy, compassion, connection? Maybe letting that wisdom from your own heart guide you through our conversation together. And resting your hands down, noticing any shifts in the body, any shifts in your mental state. And in the chat box, maybe entering a word or two. If you're feeling brave, what did your heart just whisper? Remember, be brave, relax, openness, curiosity about this group and the topic, forgiveness. It's all going to work out. You've got this. Slow down. Listen to me. Listen to me. Thank you. Chill. Gratitude. I'll invite you to not have this just as a one and done exercise and just play with the idea of checking in with your heart, even as we're having this conversation. Or, well, even more importantly, in my mind, once we click the exit button from the talk, not forgetting that the heart is there. So how are we together? Why am I in this space? Because DJ, Barry, and Janet, and Lauren had this brilliant idea decades ago to help others become coaches. And I'm grateful that it was Dale Waxman, who's a graduate of this program and a friend of mine, who, when I said, I have so many choices for our organization, Novant Health, from around the country to help us train a group of physicians and APPs and leaders in coaching and to bring a culture of coaching, who do you recommend? And in all fairness, he wasn't biased. He said, well, you can look here, there, and everywhere. But I do have a preference. And so I'm grateful that Dale brought me to DJ. And now a dozen or so of our colleagues are being trained, and we've done the Leader as Coach course, and now we're deeply, deeply embedded in the level 1 and level 2 training. And what HCI has helped me personally do is ask questions of the heart, ask questions of the heart, and to listen to others' hearts in a way that I hadn't quite known the words for before. So it's giving me a new language and showing me how to hold space and quiet so I can hear not just my own heart's messages, but other people. So I'm grateful for that. Why am I here? I was, I, I am and was the youngest of 7 children, and the son of the town doctor in a small town in New Jersey, and the son of a nuclear physicist, Rosalie, who was a scientist before that was cool for women back in the 40s and 50s. And so she was a pioneer, and her spirit is very much with me and everything I do. And after decades of study and training, I looked back and I realized that there was something missing in my medical education, even as I spent years studying the heart itself, remarkably. I was a technician of the heart, and yet everything I did with the heart came from the mind, a mind that I had sharpened, that I had praised, that I had almost worshipped because my mom was a scientist, dad was a scientist. I loved philosophy in college. What's that famous quote from Rene Descartes? Anyone know? In the chat box, you can put it in if you remember it. I think, yes, we have some Latin fans. I think, therefore, I am. So I loved that quote when I studied philosophy in college. And later on in my life, when I tried to put the pieces together of grief and loss and loneliness, I realized that it was that quote that I had to blame, and I was cursing Descartes for the message I thought he was sending. Because I took the message to mean that, well, I'm a thinker above all else. I'm good at that. It's a safe place. I'm comfortable with my thoughts. They're much cleaner than emotions. And so I found solace and shelter in my thoughts, and I was given permission, even celebrated by Rene Descartes. Oh, I think, therefore I am. So if I think more, I must be more. There was something missing there, as I've come to find out. And I realized, even as I was entering my medical career, that even though I was a technician, I was not yet a healer, not yet a healer of hearts. And I don't even think that was something I aspired to. I was a fixer, but not a healer. And it may be my bias, but I think that coaches, hopefully here and around the world, have a much bigger game to play than just helping one individual or helping them through their problems. But I see coaches as healers of hearts. And I'll invite you to think about, what does it feel like to wear that mantle? What would it be like? And some of you may be thinking, oh, that's not why I'm in this. I'm a technician. I know the right questions to ask. I'm going to study the 100,000 ICF competencies and memorize them all and pass the tests and have my clients, and that should be fine. But I will invite you, and I'm assuming that DJ will endorse this, to imagine yourself as something much greater than that, potentially as a healer of hearts. And my personal bias is that we need more heart healers in the world right now. So how did I become, as I'm even still becoming now, a healer? And how can we all become healers of hearts in our coaching roles and in our home life? I found it helpful to look at the origin of the word healing. Anyone have an idea in the chat box? The origin of the word healing. very interesting root that is shared with other words. Any guesses? What does it mean to heal or to be healed? Well, I won't give you the yes, very good. I was gonna do an unhidden hint and say I won't give you the whole amount of time to figure it out. But it comes from the Old English whole, health, healing. So what does that suggest? What does that suggest? Well, I'll give you an example from my own life. So for the longest time, I had this running voice in my head that there was something wrong with me, that I didn't belong with other people. There was something different, something weird, nerdy. I didn't fit in. And that I was broken somehow, that I didn't have the skills to fit in socially, that things just weren't the same. And I carried a feeling of brokenness with me. And then when I lost my best friend and my sister to cancer a little over a dozen years ago, that brokenness really was like shattering. And so I started to explore this question of what does it mean if I want to become a healer? I think I have to start with myself. So I had started with therapy and with medications and with leaning on people who are close to me. But how could it be possible to find wholeness if I was broken? And I also was becoming wise enough to know that my sister wasn't the first loss I had in my life, and she certainly wasn't the last loss that I would face in my life. And you all know grief. You all know loss, and you bring it with you into the coaching spaces you inhabit. So how can we face this paradox of at times feeling broken and also showing up whole? And it was so helpful for me that a friend and colleague introduced me to this concept. His name was Dr. James Doty, Jim Doty. He wrote a beautiful book called Into the Magic Shop, which appealed to me immediately because I, as a nerdy kid, was into magic. And so, wow, there's a neurosurgeon who was into magic as a kid. I got to read this book. And he tells the story of growing up with an alcoholic father and a mother who was chronically struggling with mental illness and was abusive. And he was able to create a life rooted in compassion, so that he became a partner with as he was a neurosurgeon at Stanford, became a partner with the Dalai Lama to found the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education. Unfortunately, Jim passed just this past year. Another example of the loss that we face. Could be personal loss, family loss, loss of our patients, loss of our identity as we work through the transitions in our lives. And Jim introduced me to this Japanese concept, and some of you I know are familiar with it, and it's called kintsugi. So by show of hearts, if you're familiar, you can just pop a heart up there if you're familiar with what kintsugi is. Beautiful. Kintsugi is a Japanese practice where when a vase, let's say, is knocked off a table and it shatters into a million pieces, they don't get out a broom and sweep it and throw it away. Instead, what's done is the pieces of ceramic are all gathered together, and they have a lacquer, a glue that's made with gold threads. And painstakingly, each of the shattered pieces is glued together. So at the end, we have this vase that's showing all of its cracks and not hiding the cracks. In fact, the cracks are illuminated with gold. And I thought, how can Jim's message of the kintsugi help me in my own life? And I realized that it's not a vase that we need to practice kintsugi with, it's our hearts. And if we've ever had a broken heart, we know that the cracks are there, the spaces are there. And rather than looking away, which I'm good at, and I know many of you are good at, and rather than distracting myself with 1,000,001 activities, which the world is happy to provide, I realized that the only way for me to become a healer of hearts was to first look at the wounds and then eventually come to a place where they weren't something to hide, but something to celebrate. Maybe others might benefit when we share a bit of ourselves. Maybe others feel like they're not alone. So if I, as a cardiologist now in medicine for 30 years, didn't have a good map in my medical books of the heart, what chance do we all stand? So I'd like to offer you a different map of the heart. And there are different ways that I look at the heart, but I'm going to offer you one right now. And it's a map in 3 dimensions, 3 axes, if you will. We'll call it the X, the Y, and the Z axis. So there's an aliveness that's happening right now inside each of you. And when you're sitting with a client, there's an aliveness that you can almost imagine there. And I want you to imagine a vertical axis going up and down through your body now, essentially connecting your mind and your heart. Now realize this is not something that we're just having to imagine. There are pathways, second by second, that are sending nerve signals and chemicals from the brain to the heart and back. In fact, more of the signals are traveling from the heart, your own heart, to your brain than the other way around. And you've experienced this. If you've had a moment of fright or panic, what do you feel? You feel your heart beating fast. If you're feeling love and joy, and what do you feel? You feel a warmth filling your chest. If you feel fear and stress, what do you feel? You feel a contraction, a tightness. And what's so beautiful about this is the universality here. This is one of the many reminders that we all share just one heart. That's why I happen to call my book Just One Heart. And I think this applies to coaching because it comes back to Carl Rogers, who in the 1950s was a humanist psychologist, and essentially he influenced a lot of the coaching frameworks that we see. And he had an important principle in coaching, which I've applied to my medical practice as I've tried to become a healer and not just a technician. And he called it having unconditional positive regard for other people. When you're with a client, are you sitting in judgment? Are those voices coming up? Or are you maintaining unconditional positive regard, as Rogers encouraged us to? So how do we do that? One way is to understand that we share this common physiology, that our minds and hearts are talking to each other all the time. So that's the x-axis. And then that's the y-axis. Then there's the x-axis, which is if you're sitting across from one person, your client, let's say, or a loved one, or a patient, it's simply that connection between the two of you where you're in sync. And you may think that that's a poetic idea or it's a metaphor, but it's not. There's a literal synchrony that happens in our heartbeats that's measurable when we are communicating with another person. In psychology, it's called co-regulation. Your nervous system, wherever it is, when you walk into the room, wherever it is, halfway through that tough coaching call, has a direct and immediate impact without a spoken word on the nervous system of the person you're trying to help. And what we know from coaching science and learning science is that, and we didn't know this when I was a kid, that your emotional state and your body's nervous state has a direct impact on your ability to learn and grow. So when we're in a heightened state of fight or flight, to any degree, we are less aware of future possibilities for ourselves and the problems we're hoping to solve. So part of our role, as I see it, as I'm learning from HCI, is to be the co-regulator, to set myself up in a way before each session so that the space that I enter is one of steadiness, one of openness, one of wisdom, one of wholeness, one of courage, bravery, one of lightness, and above all, a space of warmth. So what I just enumerated there, and I'll come back to these later, are what I've discovered as not competencies of the ICF. No offense. These are timeless traits of the heart. And these aren't only my timeless traits. This is based on looking back at the field of positive psychology, looking back at numerous wisdom traditions and their texts, and interviewing, as I mentioned, dozens of experts and coaches and healers and therapists and religious figures, asking them all the question, what does it mean to live and lead with heart? What does it mean to live and lead with a heart? Especially in a world that glorifies the mind. And I know the world that glorifies the mind. I busted my butt for 10 years to get into Harvard, for God's sake. And they did not prioritize my heart awareness. I can tell you that. Just the opposite. That education is great. But as Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. You ever get that feeling that when you quote somebody, you're like, they didn't really say that? There's no Latin translation for that. But I think we all get the message. We all get the message there. I'm going to pause and look at the time and just feel how things are. Yeah, this feels right. So let's continue on with the science now. So we talked about the y-axis. We talked a little bit about the x-axis. And now what is the z-axis? When I show up in a space, when you show up in a space, when you are there with let's say you're doing group coaching or team coaching, as we're learning about now in this past week in our cohort. There's something very similar in all of these situations. How I show up, my state matters. My heart will affect the heart of one person, but there's something different that happens when we're in a group. When you sing in a choir, and this is measurable, over time, heartbeats synchronize. The heart rate tends to move in the same direction, but not only that, the space between individual heartbeats, called the heart rate variability, tends to synchronize as well when we're singing or praying or simply loving in a community. Let's feel what that means for a second. I can feel the opposite happening a lot when I turn on my phone and I look at the news. So it goes in both directions. So there's that z-axis, which the science is robust there, and I'm not going to nerd out today. I intentionally chose not to show any of slides. That third dimension is about this field of emotional contagion, resonance. This is well documented in organizations that as go the leader, so goes the team. Again, even before a word is spoken. When the leaders we coach step into a room, there is a shift that happens. And that can happen consciously or more often unconsciously. So part of understanding this heart-mind connection is making the unconscious conscious and using it to our and to others' advantage. All right, question and answer time. The very first emotion that I learned about having a direct and measurable impact on the heart in terms of causing heart attacks and causing death was grief. That happened to be the emotion that I was carrying with me for many, many years. And I still carry with me, but I don't push it away anymore. It's just part of who I am. And it's known, there's something called the broken heart syndrome, which was described in the 1990s in Japan, where there was an earthquake. Now, that's not very exciting. Well, I guess it was if you're there. But what was interesting is that patients were showing up with heart attacks not 1 mile from the earthquake, not 5 miles, but dozens or even hundreds of miles away from any physical damage. Showing up into the hospital, emergency room, calling my colleagues in Japan, we have a heart attack happening, and we can't figure out why. And the only risk in that moment was an earthquake. And so that was what led to the discovery of something called the broken heart syndrome, also called in Japanese Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which is the fancy way of saying it's shaped like a traditional pot for catching octopi. So it's a narrow neck and a big pot that they would catch the octopus in. And that is actually when I'm called to the emergency room for somebody who's in a profound and sudden state of grief, and I take a picture of their heart, I can see their heart changing shape in front of me, taking the shape of this octopus pot, enlarging and ballooning outward. It's also called apical ballooning syndrome. So as a kid, I was an optimist. As an adult, I leaned more into my neuroticism, anxiety, perfectionism. Should I go on? And so part of my own healing was to reclaim my natural optimism. And I really believe that we all have that. And this comes from the work of Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, who wrote a book called Learned Optimism, because he found that doctors in particular, but others in the healing arts, over time have forgotten our optimism and have learned to become pessimistic, to see the worst. And part of my own work was to learn how to be an optimist again. And there are very specific ways we can evaluate what's known as your explanatory profile. So how do you explain things that happen in your life? Do you say that, oh, this is always happening to me, I'm the victim, this is going to last forever, this affects everything in my life, oh, adding the drama. And so Seligman suggested that we can relearn optimism. And in my optimistic outlook, I first wanted to understand this concept of a broken heart, because our clients are all, in one way or another, they may not use this language, but I'm going to invite you to consider it. How is their heart breaking? How has it been broken, and how does that show up? So I'll ask you in the chat, in my research, and you don't have to take notes here, this is in chapter 3, I wanted to know what other emotions than grief, have extensive research in the medical literature showing that when you carry these emotions over time without addressing them, without processing them, whether it's with a loved one, therapist, or a coach, what emotions have a direct impact on your physical health, specifically your cardiovascular health? Beautiful. So the guesses are coming in. Let's see if we can get them all. There are 10. I'm not going to name them all because that wouldn't leave you anything to read about, would it? So you've hit many of them. So there's loneliness, and there's grief, and there's anger and hostility. So the leaders we help who are carrying hostility and cynicism with them, this is not just an HR problem. This is a cardiovascular health problem. And when we show up as coaches in our organizations, we're not just saving dollars on a hiring problem, we're saving medical cost dollars here. So you've hit many of these. The next question that I asked, and that I'm going to ask each of you, and you're probably already going there. Well, if our mind and our heart are in constant conversation throughout the day, and if my heart is constantly talking to your heart, and if my heart is speaking to the community of hearts that I show up in, and if my heart shows up broken, unaddressed, what does that do to the people around me? Is there an opposite effect if I carry certain emotional states and mental states and attitudes with me? What do you think the answer is? According to extensive research for decades now, do our emotional states affect our physical health? Absolutely. So now here's the challenge. Just like there are what I call the 10 heartbreaker emotional states that we can look out for in our clients, There are also 10 heart wakers that can wake the heart, not just emotionally, not just from a career standpoint, but can make us healthier. So what do you think they are? Those emotional states, you can feel it. You can feel it. Think about the last week. What emotions made your heart feel warm and open and connected and alive? Gratitude, meaning, yes, peace. I'll add some. Awe, beautiful. Awe. Here's a little trivia that you all are the first group that I'm going to share this with. Awe did not make the top 10 because there was just a little less research. It was emerging. It's number 11, though. And this comes from the work of Dacher Keltner out in California in the field of positive psychology. Awe is good for the heart. Yes, so it's empathy, it's joy and laughter, happiness, it's compassion, it's love. No surprise, right? So part of the invitation here is when we wrap in about 20 minutes or so, instead of, or in addition to working through the heartbreakers in your life and in your client's life, can you also bring the heart wakers into the conversation? And even without entering the conversation, can you bring them into your own heart, into your own body, so that when you show up, that resonance can occur, that positive resonance that allows the other person to grow and not shrink. I want to share another quote now as we shift to the third and final part of this conversation. This comes from Krishnamurti. Just maybe close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Close your eyes if that feels right. Otherwise, just allow them to soften.
Run the dishwasher.
Sure.
When the heart is empty of the things of the mind, then only there is love. When the heart is empty of the things of the mind, then only is there love. So for me, this is really a question of my relationship, my attachment to this beautiful thinking mind that we all have, and my relationship, my aversion to or attachment to. Some of you have different relationships with your hearts. How do you relate to your feeling heart? And how does that impact how you show up for others? And what would it look like to bring those two in deeper conversation, the mind and the heart? There's so much more I want to speak about today, and yet as I'm learning from DJ, as I'm learning from Janet, sometimes saying less says more. Saying less says more. So I'm going to pause there. I have practices that we can do and lots that we can speak about. I'm going to pause with one metaphor to leave you with. So who in this room is a cardiologist? Anybody else a cardiologist here? Okay, good. Good. So this hopefully will be a little new for you. So the heart has these three beautiful little arteries called the coronary arteries. You know that already. There's one that goes on the right side, and there's two that go on the left. You may have heard scary terms like the widowmaker, etc. And some people are terrified of having a heart problem, and there's a lot of fear around our hearts, especially my patients who've had heart disease. So much of the work that I do is to coach them so they don't have to live through fear and with fear. They can live with more hope and optimism. Because I know that that doesn't just make them feel better, it improves their health. So these coronary arteries do something really amazing. As your heart is beating, and it's beat thousands of times over the last day, you might think that its only job is to serve others. give to the brain, give to the liver, give to the muscles when you're exercising, especially. But what most people don't know is the first 5 ounces or so of every single heartbeat don't go anywhere except right back to nourish and support the heart itself. The heart is very wise. Now, you don't get to be 99 years old like my father, who, thank goodness, is still living, without a heart that knows that you can't function only by serving others and immersing yourself in playing that role of only helping others. So my invitation is, can you be just a little more like your own coronary arteries? When you're there to serve others, can you always, without even having to ask permission, the coronaries don't ask permission of the heart or of the body, is it okay if I give back to myself right now? So in what way, and I'll ask you in the chat box, in what way can you be a little more like the coronary arteries? In what way? Without asking permission in the next week. What does that look like for you?
And this is so funny, Jonathan. When I heard you say it, but what it came through my filter, it was the coronary artist. And it's
Coronary
almost
artist.
the coronary artist. It's like, what are you painting? What are you creating? Is the conversation for that I will live with this
Beautiful.
week. Yeah. You know,
Thank you. Yeah.
as we're coming back into the space with you in this deep breath, it feels like we just got started. First, I think we could all hang on to every word you're saying, and the explorations that are available in each component of what you're saying are really brilliant. Um, and I think it was Nisi who said, who I don't know yet, but I will, Nisi who said, that's how the light gets in when things are broken, right? And that's one of the things that Leonard Cohen said, right? We're all a little cracked. That's how the light gets in.
Mm.
And as I'm listening to you, 2 things occurred to me. One was grief holds every emotion because grief is the container in the middle of the emotional calibration and the frequencies that are assigned to each emotion that moves. It moves love, it moves joy, it moves all of that up and down, right? We experience so many things in a day. And I'm looking at the heart as, as really that container. It was so pronounced to me that you looked at the pottery that holds the octopus and that is the image that you get.
Mm.
Because the thing that I know, this is the second part that really came forward, is most of us feel like this is a time we were born to serve on the planet. I know you feel that way. And if this is the time we signed up, to come together to serve, what I've also heard a lot of light workers and healers and physicians say is, didn't know I was signing up for this, as we look out and see the collapse of a civilization. And that's what's happening.
Mm.
Things that we know, systems that we've leaned in. And so there's more grief in most of the conversations that I have with executives, with leaders, with teams, in coaching in the past 2 or 3 years, especially. And
Mm.
so the thing that I'm also learning is that without the complexity of the both and the yin and yang of something, seeing the shadow and the positive, and all things are holding the space for that. It's almost like the heart is holding a lot. It's like,
Mm.
how do you love the shadow, right?
Mm.
And I think part of that is our work as coaches, is to have people look at what they're dealing with, to be real about it, to bring it fully online, and then to have them love things like, I hate what's going on right now. Like the things that we're saying in the background as we collect ourselves in these safe communities is not exactly what we're saying in front of our clients. So I'm just curious about your take on that, like what we're saying in the background and how that creates this dichotomy or perhaps this tension in not only our emotions, but in our heart, and what you might see as the scientist and the healer in that space.
I
think about
I'm in a phase now where these dichotomies are really the source of all wisdom, and I'm drawn to them. And I'm so drawn to them that I need more words to describe them because I describe tension, right? I describe a balance. I describe a dance, which I personally like. And even you alluded to what's happening in the world, and the world has always had challenges. And are they worse? Are they better? Don't know. People have written books asking that question. Are we just more aware of them? And yet, the call that I have for myself is how can I continue to show up in a way that makes things better and not worse? And my realization is that's impossible if I just become a vessel that holds the weight of the world. That's not for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. And yet that is the model that I carried and believed that was the role of a doctor. And I'm not alone. There's a lot of doctors and healers out there and nurses who believe that unless they carry the weight of the world, and activists, I've spoken with activists,
yeah.
that unless you carry the weight of the world, you're not doing your job. And I take issue with that. And I think we can balance both of those things.
Brilliant. Yeah, in one of my meditations recently, I got, "This is not your fight."
Mm,
And I was like, in listening, I was like, okay, well, I'm glad that's off my back. What is my work, right? Continuing for all of us as coaches, continuing to navigate back into
mm,
um, or leap back into the light that we carry, the light and the love and the noticing and the presence. And you have done that beautifully. You've given us new language, Jonathan, today, which is going to serve us all in how we coach and how we teach. And I'd love to hear from some of these folks in the last 10 minutes that we have allocated here via voice. And the best way to do that is to raise your hand, and then we'll acknowledge you in the order that you show up to see what you want to acknowledge that you're taking away from this. We don't need your questions. We don't need how much you know. Everybody knows a lot. What I want is, what are you taking away that's going to serve you from this dialogue today, from Jonathan's presence here? What's new? And I know that you're processing because there was a lot in this, a lot. And I love that it's beyond the competencies. Yay! Laura Hayes, hey, I wish we could see your beautiful face.
Hi, I'm sparing you my bobbing head on the treadmill, so I'm out of
Okay.
breath as well.
Okay.
Hey, Laura.
I've just been sitting all day, so sparing you my bobbing head and sweaty face. So,
Okay.
I mean, Jonathan, I just adore you and learn from you every time I hear you speak. And I think what I'm taking from this today is not necessarily something new, but sometimes reminders can be the most powerful thing. And the reminder for me of again, sorry, I'm out of breath, acknowledging the cracks and knowing that we're all perfectly imperfect. And it's part of what makes us who we are and makes me sort of embrace the term that I've started my year with, which is acceptance. And yeah, I'm really grateful for joining this today. So thank you, DJ, and your team for putting this on. And thank you, Jonathan. And it's so nice to see Brad and Tanya and Rob and all these familiar faces as well. So thank you.
Yeah. It's nice
Thanks,
to go into
Laura.
this room where you see so many people. And yeah, your expression of gratitude, Laura, is beautiful and it's always present. Thank you. Janet Schlaze, and then Lauren Pinwell Waynes. Janet.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Jonathan and DJ and Barry, for making this happen. This is great. And Janet and Lauren and everybody else who entered into making this happen. For me specifically, it was a wonderful reminder that of the importance of taking care of ourselves and our hearts, obviously, and reminding us that who we are and how we are being in the world and with our clients and colleagues and anybody else that we interact with, the checkout person at Trader Joe's, that we are always having an impact, an energetic impact in the world, and being reminded of that to me intensifies the light of our intention. So thank you.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
wise woman. Lauren.
Thank you.
Lauren.
Um, Jonathan, I just always love how how impressively you blend the head and the heart wisdom. It's interesting how patterns show up. So I was just having a conversation shortly before this with Elisha around the tension between listening to our heart and listening to our head in healthcare. Um, and just the importance of that, and how, our brains are so prioritized, and there's some relief sometimes if we can let go of that and lean into the heart wisdom a little bit more. So thank you for the reminder on that.
Thank you, Lauren. I have to say this, that I know most of you on this call, fortunately, and I'm getting to know some, but I really do believe that, we show up as we are because of the people that we get to be with and to have conversations with. And for me, allowing myself to be changed, that's about the openness, which I was alluding to. So Lauren, you show up like that, and it really helps support me growing, and Laura as well. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you are generous, Jonathan. You have a generative heart, but you also are so generous in your capacity to hold love. And it shows up in every conversation you bring forward. So you are light and you are love. We have Lindsay, Barry, and Agnes, you have your hand up. Yeah. So we'll do those three, and then we're going to have to move along. So we just have a few minutes. Lindsay?
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you always, DJ and Janet and Barry, for holding this container. The three takeaways that I'm really carrying with me today and into my week ahead is the blood serving the heart with every heartbeat. I can't remember how many liters you said goes back.
100,000 beats a day.
Okay, but with every beat, how much
about
goes?
5 cc's. Yeah.
5 cc's goes back to the heart first. Definitely the octopus container. That was a very visual, had a huge visual impact on me. And also the remembering that the emotions that we're carrying in our heart, and what is that doing to your mind, and how is that impacting those around you. That was a really important remembrance for me that I'm carrying. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, you said, and I like that you brought in the rewords, the remembrance just now, Lindsay, but Jonathan, you talked several times about reclaiming. And so as I'm listening to everybody's, spin the dialogue, it's the reword is the alpha and the omega. It's that we already know, and we are being invited back in to a remembering and a reclaiming. And I love that you leaned into that today. And I think for us, it's to look at what's happening with our clients as well. I'm going to ask you to put your hand down, Lindsay, and Barry, you, and then Agnes. We just have a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm curious, as a cardiologist, as you've made this journey, this shift in your own outlook of life, what have you noticed in the outcomes of your patients? Have you noticed a difference in those outcomes?
Well, there's the funny answer, and then there's the serious answer. The funny answer is that my schedule is a lot more full, and people show up on my schedule, and I say, well, what are you here to talk about? Is it your blood pressure? Is it your cholesterol? They say, no, I just want a little coaching and a little meditation. That's all.
When you build the container, they come, right? They come from
and
what
so
you're building. Yeah, I love
and
it.
so I think what you're alluding to are there measurable benefits, and there are. I mean, it's remarkable. Some of them are longer term. People's dietary patterns change when I just show up with empathy for the struggles that they're having, instead of trying to be a teller and an advisor. We were talking at the beginning of the call how doctors tend to show up as coaches, as wanting to give advice, and as we know, that's not a very helpful approach typically. And so my patients tend to change their lifestyle when I show up as a coach in the exam room. And and even short term, when I show up in a calmer state and I help them regulate, sometimes it's by humming or by breathing, or we meditate together in the exam room, I can measure blood pressure difference. So, and heart rate dropping down. So I can see immediate changes, and I can also see longer term changes that I know will reduce their chance of heart disease. Most dramatically, I've had patients who have struggled with chronic chest pain because they have arteries that have already had blockages. And we've tried every medication, but through a relationship and through being a hearing and hopefully healing voice and presence, the chest pain between visits tends to go down. And I can't fully explain that other than there's a reactivity there. So some of it's measurable and some of it is just felt.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks.
So I'm gonna here's what we're gonna do. We have some people who will need to jump off now. So I'm gonna complete, but if you want to hang out with us, we're gonna continue the dialogue, which Jonathan asked if we could do for a few minutes afterwards, knowing that we were gonna get into this piece now. But there's, oh God, there's so much I want to say. There's so much I want to say other than thank you all for your attention today, for creating community. This is a safe space for us to come and collect ourselves and to reclaim sanity and sanctuary and to begin to really tease out what healing is. Jonathan's quest here is really significant. And Jonathan, your research in this space, answering the questions Barry just asked you, is going to be significant, not only in healing and healthcare, but in coaching. When we put a stake in the ground in 2012 to do this program, we had a sense of what it was going to be. And we built the program around how we would want to study with people like y'all. But we had no idea. We really didn't have the idea of the impact until we began hearing people, particularly like you, Jonathan, you specifically, who are talking about the difference that it's making in your practice of medicine. That's worthy a global platform. I'm so glad your book is being translated into a million different languages and that you came to play with us and that you brought your tribe with you. It is it's significant, and it's an honoring of what the space was intended to be all along. So thank you for that. For those of you who want to hang out, Brad, I know you've got a question. Others who want to hang out, we're going to stop any recording here and we're just going to play for a few